West Paris, an interesting city. So we did as much sightseeing as we could and enjoyed ourselves. We were assigned to the 30th Division, which was stationed right across the German line in Herzogenrath. First of all, we went to Maastricht in Holland, where there was the headquarters of the 9th Army. Then we went down to division headquarters, who in turn shipped us out to that Herzogenrath, where they had the prisoner of war camp, and we were to learn the routine of interrogating prisoners and getting whatever intelligence we could get out of them. That lasted for quite a while. We did quite a little work, ran back and forth. It was kind of quiet. I mean, not too much fighting there and not too much work until, I would say a month later or so, when the Battle of the Bulge started. Oh, well, I should have mentioned that after landing in Normandy, we stayed there for a little while before we really took our long trip down to Paris. So we did see a little of the Normandy fighting and did as much work as we could, but it was a disorganized kind of a case because all these intelligence teams were in one bunch and nobody really knew what to do, or and all it was disorganized until finally we managed to get into Paris and got reorganized, as I mentioned, and we were assigned to the 30th Division. We went up there and spent several weeks then in, I'm quite sure the name was Herzogenrath, which was in Germany, right across the border. Well, we had been there by way of Liège, and it wasn't too far from Aix-la-Chapelle or Aachen. And we did some work there until the rumors were about a German counterattack. Then, of course, all hell broke loose. In the morning I went there to division headquarters, and while I was there they told me to hurry up and get on back because orders came that we are moving out this afternoon. Well, after having a few weeks of peace and quiet, we more or less had settled down and our stuff was unpacked, so naturally we did our best to get back there. By the time we got back, the other lieutenant and the enlisted men left there waiting for us had packed all our stuff in our duffel bags, just crammed it in, ready to put everything onto the jeeps, ready to move out. But I just couldn't see the sense in rushing back to Liège. We had orders to go back there rather than with the 30th Division. And I told them, let's just forget it. Let's stay in back, stay here overnight and go back the next day. We went back across the Holland border, found a nice empty house, stayed there all night. We had enough food, and the next day everything was quiet, too quiet for comfort. But we head out, went on down to Maastricht, reported into headquarters, and the first thing the officer there said, "Gee, we thought you didn't make it. We thought you were captured or something. Why didn't you come last night?" I said, "Well, we were detained. The roads were so crowded we couldn't get through, and finally we decided to stay until the traffic slows down and come in the morning. That's what we did." He said, "Well, that was a stupid thing to do because the Germans are riding back of you." Well, they never saw me. Okay, then we were back in Maastricht and we were reassigned to the 75th Division. A division that just came from the States, was thrown right into the field in the Bulge. We went from Liège east into the Wash Mountains, and that was kind of a bad time there because a lot of German soldiers in American uniform had infiltrated behind the lines, and all our men, including myself, spoke with a distinct foreign accent. We had a considerable difficulty making ourselves known to our own men, and more than once were we on the wrong side of a gun with hands up being marched into an army post to be identified. I did considerable work trying to get my men to get acquainted with everybody, talk as much as they can so these people get to know our accent, so these things don't happen too often. We always were kind of viewed with a little suspicion. The units were always kept aside, and after all, that was typical for intelligence units. They are kept away from headquarters. They do their work, report to headquarters, give intelligence to headquarters, but headquarters doesn't want to have anything to do with them, let's say, in a way of social activities. Oh, I got along fine with everybody, but I mean the plan was intelligence units stay by themselves. They do not go into headquarters building, they have their own place. And I always had our own headquarters. And generally a very good place because we were able to scrounge, we could speak the language. If there were any natives there at all, we would manage to find the best place, the best beds, let's call it. If there was any food, we would have it. So we did quite all right. And we went from one town to the next. It was snow. The food, we had to stand in the chow line, so something like 10 paces apart, so the line was probably half a mile long. By the time we got up to the kitchen, the food was cold, but we took what we got, and the men made the best of it. Fighting was bad. The prisoners started coming in, sometimes really demoralized. Our officers expected them to know a lot about what's going on in the German army. Our colonel especially insisted that I find out who, let's say to take an extreme case, who developed the 80-inch gun, the 88 millimeter, which was the big German high-powered cannon, which was really well respected by everybody, friend or foe. Or the colonel would want to know how many men are in a certain unit, what kind of weapons they have. The colonel never realized that our own GIs wouldn't know that information about our own army or our own unit. But there he thought that every German soldier who came into our hands was able to give us a lot of information. In a way, my opinion of the average higher officer didn't exactly improve very much. They were good soldiers, professional soldiers, knew what they were doing, but when it came to understanding the Europeans, well, they had a lot to learn. That's about all for right now. Well, what I remember of the Battle of the Bulge, it's mostly snow, not too much food. At times we had to scrounge and actually steal what the civilians had left. I remember the bus bombs, which really caused a lot of damage farther back. We were in the, I guess about 20 miles, 50 miles, something like that, east of Liège, and Liège suffered quite badly from bus bombs. We took in a lot of prisoners. The German armies really were in bad shape at that time, and we Among the prisoners we had men who originally were assigned to the Air Force, to the Navy, to just about any kind of organization. But now it seems that whenever a man was found walking around in Germany, they put him in uniform or grabbed him, regardless of where he came from, and assigned him to one of the armies in Belgium. We took in some SS men, but they also were a rather sore lot. Some of them tried to act a little smart, but most of them by that time had gotten some sense, and all they really wanted to do is get back into a prisoner of war camp, get something to eat, and get out of the miserable snow. I remember one night, it was very cold. We got in one man, he asked me if I could do something for his leg. His leg was actually coated with ice. I don't know whatever happened to him, but the next morning I have carried him to the first aid station and they took care of him. I always was in good standing with medics because I supplied them with so small pistols from the Germans and ammunition for them. They were not supposed to have any, but they all tried to get some souvenirs. We went into one town. A few civilians were still there who told us that the Germans had hanged 2 or 3 of the village officials because, the Germans were pretty desperate in those days, and naturally the Belgians never were very friendly towards the Germans. So all in all it was a miserable time. The weather, the cold, lack of food, everything contributed to making it miserable, not only for the Belgians, also for the Americans, and most of all, of course, for the Germans. We got some art characters in. One little boy, well, I don't think he was more than 17. He carried half of a anti-tank rifle. We asked him what happened to the other one. He said, well, his partner was hurt and he probably is in a prison camp. Then why didn't he throw his part away? Well, he wasn't allowed to do that. He had to carry his. And it's a fact, if he had thrown it away, he may have faced a firing squad on short order. So he carried his half of the anti-tank rifle until we took him in. We still had the same problem with our officers. They thought every German soldier would have a lot of information. And of course most of them had very little. One item in Manhay, I may have mentioned it previously, our IPW, Interrogators of Prisoner of War, team practically took the whole town. Then, I think it was towards the end of January or middle of February, when the Battle of the Bulge was finally terminated and new divisions came in to secure the area and the fighting divisions were taken out. And we went down through some of the French cities like Sedan and some of the other famous French fort cities. Verdun was one of them. We came into Verdun during a blizzard, and I think at that time we lost about 1 out of 10 with frostbite. One of my men asked me, in my jeep, we had 4 in one jeep, asked me if we couldn't keep on going, never mind staying for food, let's keep on going where we are going to end up anyway. We knew where our division was going to settle down for the next few days. So I took a chance and we went ahead of everybody else, got into the little town. I reported into the MPs and they were a little annoyed of my getting away from the main body, but nothing to do. We went into a farmhouse, big family there. We gave them a little food and they gave us a room and it wasn't too bad.